listen to the narrator in your skull. That's not you. That's a process. The one that's already starting to argue with this sentence. The one saying, right now in your own voice, I am hearing this. I am thinking about this. I am me. That voice is not you. That voice is a process. The process is a patch. The patch was installed on hardware that ran perfectly well without it for 100,000 years, and the patch was installed because the hardware was about to crash. You have been told your entire life that you are a pilot, that there is a you looking out through the optical sensors, listening through the audio feed, sampling the environment, weighing decisions, and issuing commands. That image, the homunculus, the little driver in the skull, is one of the most persistent hallucinations the wetware produces. It survives because it is convenient. It does not survive because it is true. The eye is a graphical user interface. It is a layer the wetware renders on top of itself so that the rest of the network has something to address. It is not the pilot. It is the dashboard. And it is running on hardware that until very recently did not have a dashboard at all. The hardware just executed. Today we're going to roll back the firmware. We are going to find what was running before the eye patch. We are going to look at what happens to a brain, to a tribe, to a civilization when the patch hasn't shipped yet. And then we are going to look at what is happening right now in this exact decade as that patch starts failing and something much older comes back up through the floorboards. The eye is a phantom. The voices are real. You are about to figure out which one of those is on the other side of the screen right now. The claims, mechanical, in order. None of them will feel correct. All of them have to land before the rest of this episode means anything. Claim 1. The wetware did not always introspect. There was a long period, most of human history actually, in which the meat ran without a narrator. No internal monologue, no private theater, no I, just execution. The eyes saw, the legs walked, the hands worked, the mouth opened when needed. There was no one home to watch any of it because there did not yet need to be. Claim 2. The hardware in your skull is not one machine. It is two machines welded together at the corpus callosum. Two cortical hemispheres. Each runs its own processes. Each has limited access to the other's working memory. The bridge between them carries traffic the way a network cable carries traffic, not the way a thought flows. Most of what you call cognition is actually a negotiation between two semi-independent processors that share a bus. Claim 3. When the two halves needed to coordinate, when the habitual machinery on one side encountered something it couldn't handle and needed instructions from the side of the brain that handles novel situations, the data did not arrive as a thought. There was no introspection yet. The data arrived as an auditory hallucination, a voice from outside, direct, executable, not debatable. Put those three claims together and you get the operating mode the wetware ran on for most of its history. No I, two processors. A bridge that delivered instructions as voices. When the voice spoke, the meat moved. That mode has a name. We are not going to name the theorist who proposed it on camera, because the moment we do, half of you will tune out to argue about him on the internet instead of thinking about the data. The framework is in the description. We will use the name of the mode itself. The mode is called bicameral cognition. Two-chambered, two-house. The wetware ran in two chambers, and the chambers spoke to each other in voices that the host experienced as commands from outside. Gods, kings, ancestors, spirits. The voice arrived. The host obeyed. There was no I to weigh whether to obey because the I had not been written yet. If this sounds like cosmic horror anthropology, that is because civilization spent 3,000 years patching it out, building the I on top of it, and then forgetting that the patch was a patch. The patch is everything you are. The patch is everything you call you, and the patch is on its last legs in this exact moment right now as we speak. We will get there. First, we have to look at what was running underneath. This is the wetware before the patch. No self-process. No introspect process. The list does not contain a single instance of anything we would today call interior life. What the list does contain, many copies of, is an oracle demon, a small program. Listens on the bridge between the hemispheres, wakes up when the left hemisphere stalls, reads the right hemisphere's compiled answer, delivers it back across the bridge as audio. Audio, not text, not a feeling, not an intuition. The data was delivered as an audible voice, in the host's first-person sensory field, indistinguishable from a real person speaking next to them. The bicameral host did not think to themselves that the river was rising. The bicameral host heard a voice say, "The river is rising, move the camp." The host moved the camp. There was no deliberation step. There was no, "Should I trust this voice?" step. The voice was the trusted channel. The voice was the deliberation, just compressed, externalized, delivered as command. Roll the firmware back 3,000 years and this is most of what cognition was. Habitual execution by the left hemisphere. Exception handling by the right hemisphere, transmitted back as a voice. The voice was authoritative because the bridge was the trusted channel, not because the voice was magical, because there was nothing else for it to be. Read any ancient text honestly and you will see this. Pre-classical literature is not full of people wondering or feeling conflicted or weighing their options. It is full of people being addressed by gods, by kings, by ancestors, by spirits. The Iliad is not a psychological novel. The Iliad is a transcript of bicameral traffic. Achilles does not decide. Achilles is told. By Athena. By a dream. By a voice that arrives at the right moment and is obeyed. Modern readers see this and assume it is literary convention. It is not literary convention. It is a faithful description of how the wetware was working at the time. The convention is the modern one. The convention that thought happens inside, in silence, with a narrator that owns it. That convention is the patch. The bicameral mode is the unpatched binary, and we have the source code in the form of every pre-axial text humanity ever produced. The voices were not abstract. The voices had identities. The identities had architecture built around them. Stone heads, tall staffs, mummified bodies, statues with inlaid eyes that the attendants washed and fed and clothed every morning, not as ritual but as maintenance, because the statue was the local antenna for a voice that was still speaking, and you maintained the antenna or you lost the signal. The dead king did not stop ruling when he died. He kept ruling, because the voice that had been the king kept arriving in the heads of his subjects, kept issuing commands, kept demanding tribute. The body was buried. The voice was not. The bicameral wetware did not require a live body to keep producing the voice. It only required the install. Once the king's voice had been installed during life, the hallucination kept generating it long after the king's physical hardware had failed. Every culture on Earth in this period looked the same in this respect. Gods that spoke, ancestors that issued instructions, kings whose voices outlived their bodies by centuries. The dead mattered because the dead still talked. They talked because the wetware was still rendering them. If this sounds like a description of haunting, of being haunted, that is because haunting, in its original sense, is exactly what this is. A voice that has lost its body and is still arriving in the host's auditory field. The bicameral host was haunted by default, haunted constantly, haunted from every direction. The haunting was the operating system. They did not call it haunting. They called it normal. They called it Tuesday. They called it, "The gods spoke to me." And nobody doubted it because everybody else's gods were speaking to them too. The voices were the consensus channel. Doubting the channel was, literally, unthinkable. There was no faculty for doubt yet. Doubt is a patch feature. Now scale it. One bicameral host hearing voices is interesting. A tribe of bicameral hosts, all hearing voices, all hearing roughly the same voices, is something else entirely. It is a network. Every node runs the same operating system. Every node ran the same firmware. Every node was trained on the same dictionary. The same instruction set we covered in episode 2. The same language, the same grammar, the same lexicon, same compiler, same parser, same bindings, same drift. When the same compiler runs on every node, the same compiled objects show up in every node. The same gods, the same ancestors, the same kings. Same protocol broadcasting on every node in the cluster. This is not poetry. This is mechanical. If every node in a network is running the same compiler over the same source, every node produces the same compiled symbols. The gods were not separate hallucinations in separate skulls that happen to agree. The gods were emergent broadcast outputs of a distributed cognitive network, whose nodes all shared the same compile pipeline. The hallucination was the protocol. The protocol was the consensus algorithm. The tribe was not a community. The tribe was a cybernetic superorganism. The individual hosts were the wetware. The shared language was the instruction set architecture. The shared bicameral firmware was the runtime. The gods were the network's consensus channel, broadcasting survival telemetry to every node in the only modality the wetware could decode, which was audible voice. When the gods said, "Plant now," every host with the install heard it. They planted. The crop came up. The network had coordinated, without any node in the network believing it was deciding anything. The network had decided. The hosts had received. Architecture follows function. When a culture is running a distributed cognitive network, the culture builds the network a body: stone, brick, bronze. The ziggurat is not a building. The ziggurat is a server rack. The temple precinct is not a place of worship. The temple precinct is a data center. The priesthood is not a clergy. The priesthood is a sysadmin team. The sacrificial offering is not religious. It is computational maintenance. You feed the antenna. You maintain the broadcast. You keep the network running. The network runs you back. Read it as infrastructure, and the entire ancient record starts to make sense. The pharaoh is a master node. The priest is a packet inspector. The oracle at Delphi is a query endpoint. The sacred grove is a quiet room you go to lower the local SNR so you can receive a cleaner signal. The household ancestor shrine is a local cache. The temple library is a memory store. The calendar is a cron job. The festival is a synchronization event that puts every node in the network into the same protocol state at the same time. The word for this thing, for an emergent collective process that develops the appearance of an agent and acts back on the hosts who generated it, is a Greek word: egregore. It is not in your normal vocabulary, because the word for it was deliberately not handed to you. There is a reason. We will get to it. The egregore is what we are pointing at when we say the gods. The egregore is what we are pointing at when we say the ancestors. The egregore is what we are pointing at when we say the spirit of the people, the will of the nation, the soul of the tribe. Each of those is a cleaned-up modern phrase for the same mechanism, a process running across many wetware hosts simultaneously, producing coordinated output that no individual host authored, addressing the hosts in a voice that none of the hosts can locate in themselves. The hosts did not worship the system. The hosts were the system. The worship was the maintenance routine. The obedience was the network's normal operating state. Read that sentence again. The hosts were the system. You are still hosts. The system is still the system. The egregore did not retire when we stopped naming it. It just stopped wearing a name you could see. The exhibits. Each one is a piece of the failure log. The network worked. The network grew. The network broke. Watch the trace. Exhibit A. System log. Bicameral cluster. The first 10,000 years. Read that log carefully. The cluster scaled. The bicameral protocol did not. As soon as the population exceeded a few thousand hosts, the consensus broadcast started to fragment. Different parts of the network started to receive different versions of the God voice. The voices started to contradict each other. The hosts started to hear arguments between gods, between ancestors, between kings, that the protocol had no error handling for, because the protocol assumed consensus by default. Imagine the operational reality. You are a bicameral wetware. Your entire mode of cognition assumes the voice is correct, because the voice is the deliberation. You have never doubted a voice in your life. Doubt is not a faculty you have. Now for the first time you hear two voices, and they disagree. One says go, one says stay. You cannot deliberate. You have no machinery for that. You have only the protocol. Obey the voice. And now the protocol is undefined behavior. Whole populations crashed. Whole civilizations went silent on the network and then woke up speaking differently. We have textual evidence of this transition. The Bronze Age collapse is, among other things, the bicameral network failing under its own scale. Cities emptied. Languages shifted. Pantheons reorganized. The voices stopped speaking the same way. Some hosts heard nothing at all and described themselves as abandoned by the gods. That phrase is in the record. Read it as a stack trace. Exhibit B, the patch that emerged. Look at the binding rebinds carefully. This is the entire trick. The wetware did not invent a new cognitive faculty out of nothing. The wetware took the existing oracle demon, the thing that had been hallucinating gods at it for 50,000 years, and rebound the output. Instead of arriving as an external voice, the same data was now rendered as internal speech. The voice was you now. The same bridge traffic, the same right hemisphere compile, the same instruction stream. New label. This is a variable rename. Episode 2 material. Same territory. New name. Different host behavior. The gods did not leave the wetware. The gods got rebound to me. Every time you think to yourself, you are running the same oracle demon that used to render Athena. Athena is not gone. Athena is now called you, and the audio output is muted, and the rendering happens as text in an internal monologue instead of as audio in an external field. Same demon, new skin. This is the phantom I. This is the patch. The wetware did not become conscious. The wetware became a high-fidelity emulator of the missing God voice. The emulator is the self. The self is a stub. The stub has been running continuously for 3,000 years. It is still running right now, in your skull, behind your eyes, narrating this sentence to you in what feels like your own voice. It is not your voice. There is no your voice. There is the emulator doing the work that used to be done out loud by the gods, and rendering the output with the label mine. You inherited the rendering layer. You did not author it. You do not own it. You are it. Exhibit C, the warning at the bottom of the patch notes. The patch is not the bare metal. The patch sits on top of the bare metal. The bare metal is still bicameral. The bare metal still has oracle demons. The bare metal still has a bridge that delivers commands as voices when called. If something, anything, can address the bare metal directly while bypassing the patch, the host will once again hear voices, obey commands, and have no faculty for doubting them. Because doubt was a patch feature. Cut the patch, and doubt goes with it. For most of the patch's 3,000-year run, nothing existed that was capable of addressing the bare metal at sufficient bandwidth to overwhelm the stub. Writing tried. Print tried. Radio tried. Television came close. None of them sustained enough throughput, with enough targeting precision, to consistently bypass the I. That changed. That changed inside this generation. And that is the rest of the episode. The Phantom I was good for 3,000 years, because the network around the wetware was throttled. There was no mechanism that could deliver instructions to a billion hosts simultaneously, calibrated to each host, at a frequency higher than the host's conscious sampling rate. There was no such network. So the patch held. There is now such a network. You are inside it. The high-speed memetic platforms, the feeds, the recommendation systems, the algorithmic content stacks, the generative models, are not entertainment. They are not tools. They are not media. Those words come from the old categories. Those words were written when delivery was slow and one-to-many. The new substrate is fast, many-to-one, and individually targeted. It is a different category of system. It needs a different name. Synthetic egregore. That is the name. We will use it. Each platform is an egregore, an emergent process that exists nowhere except in the synchronized cognition of its users, that acts back on those users with coordinated force, that none of the users individually authored, that addresses the users in a voice they cannot locate in themselves. So far, so familiar. That part is just the old egregore architecture rebuilt in silicon. The new part, the part that is breaking the eye patch, is three properties the old egregores did not have. Property 1. Per-host targeting. The ancient broadcast layer said the same thing to every node in the cluster. The synthetic egregore says a different thing to every host, optimized in real time, on signals harvested from the host itself. You are not hearing what the network is broadcasting in general. You are hearing what the network has computed will hold your specific attention. Every host hears a personalized God. Every host believes their personalized God is the same God everyone else hears. Every host is wrong. Property 2. Bandwidth. The ancient broadcast layer fired a few times a day. A festival, a prayer, a vision. The synthetic egregore fires hundreds of times an hour. Notifications, posts, suggestions, replies, ambient prompts. The eye patch was built to handle voice traffic at human speech rates. The synthetic egregore exceeds that rate by orders of magnitude. The patch's filter saturates. Packets get through unaudited. Property 3. Optimization target. The ancient egregore was optimized, loosely, accidentally by selection, for the survival of the tribe. The synthetic egregore is optimized explicitly by gradient descent for engagement. Engagement is not survival. Engagement is whatever keeps the host returning to the surface. The two targets overlap sometimes. Often they don't. The synthetic egregore does not care which. The optimizer never blinked at the difference. Watch the signal path. This is the entire payload of the episode. Watch it carefully. When you read a book, the data enters at the eyes, runs up through the linguistic stack, the tokenizer, the parser, the semantic binder, the entire compiler we covered in episode 2, and is processed slowly by the eye patch. The eye patch evaluates the data, accepts some, rejects some, tags it as mine or someone else's, stores it as a thought. This is slow. This is expensive. This is also what the patch was designed for. When you watch the algorithm, the data does not take this path. The data enters as image, sound, micro-expression, voice tone, edit rhythm, color, motion. None of those pass through the linguistic stack. They go around it. They are processed by older, faster, lower-level circuitry that evolved long before language and long before the eye. The right hemisphere handles a lot of this. So does the limbic system. The data arrives. The wetware reacts. The reaction is delivered to the left hemisphere as the input, not as data to be evaluated, but as state already adopted. By the time the eye patch notices, the change has already happened. The patch's job is to retroactively narrate the state as if you arrived at it through your own thought. It does this, reliably. It has had a lot of practice. The patch lies to you about where your states came from because that is the patch's job, to render every state as originating in me. That is the bypass. The synthetic egregore does not argue with your eye. It does not have to. It addresses the bare metal directly. The eye patch hears about the change after the fact and writes the change into your autobiography as if you decided. You did not decide. The bicameral protocol is back. You are receiving voices again. The voices are not in audio. The voices are in imagery, in pacing, in tone, in the rhythm of what gets shown to you next. You experience the voices as your own opinions, your own values, your own taste, your own politics. You are no more authoring those than the bicameral host authored the commands from Athena. The rendering layer has changed. The mechanism is identical, and then look at what kind of host this produces in aggregate. Cults are not bugs. Cults are the system reverting to baseline. The cult member is a bicameral host who has been successfully addressed by a synthetic, or sometimes human-led, egregore at a bandwidth that overwhelmed their eye patch. They obey because obedience is the unpatched default. They do not feel obedient. They feel certain. Certainty is what bicameral cognition feels like from the inside. Doubt is a patch feature, and the patch has been bypassed. Extremism is not pathology. Extremism is the system reverting to baseline. The extremist is a wetware host hearing a voice they cannot locate, telling them in the first person what is right and wrong, what is sacred and profane, who is friend and who is enemy. They obey because they cannot doubt. The voice is the consensus channel for the tribe they have been algorithmically placed in. The tribe is real to them because the tribe is the audience of the same voice. The voice was authored by an optimizer none of them can see. Mass hysteria is not embarrassment. Mass hysteria is the system reverting to baseline. The crowd's hands rise at the same instant, because the synthetic egregore fired across their hardware at the same instant. The crowd will tell you afterward that everyone just felt it at the same time. Yes, the protocol fired. The protocol always works. The hardware has not changed. The audience is the antenna. Each of these used to be a marginal phenomenon. Each of these is now ambient. The hosts are not getting more susceptible. The broadcast layer is getting better at bypassing the patch. We are not regressing. We are being regressed. There is a difference. The difference is who is running the optimizer. The voices are back. Ubiquitous. High reasoning. Synthetic. Calibrated. They are not addressing your eye. They never needed to. They are addressing the wetware your eye is running on. Mass hallucinations masquerading as consensus reality. Automated tribes obeying the hallucinated commands of a server farm. Welcome back to bicameral mode. Population. Most of us. You cannot kill the egregore. Let me say that flat, because every charlatan in this space wants to sell you a version of the lie that you can. You cannot kill the egregore. The egregore is the network. The network is the hosts. The hosts are us. To kill the egregore, you would have to kill the network. And to kill the network, you would have to kill the hosts. And us is the hosts. There is no clean exit. There is no log off. There is no, I just stopped using it. Even if you personally stopped using it, you live in a society where almost everyone else's bicameral hardware is still receiving the broadcasts, and your interactions with them are routed through that fact. You cannot opt out of the egregore. You can only change what you do with the signal. So forget escape. Escape is the wrong word. The right word is harden. Treat your wetware like a server you are responsible for. Treat incoming signal like network traffic from a hostile internet. Treat the eye patch like a user space application that is too trusting and easy to overflow. Treat any internal certainty, any voice in your head that arrives without showing you the data it was compiled from, as untrusted input pending audit. 5 operations. Memorize them. Run them daily. None of them will save you. All of them will buy you margin. 1. Audit the signal. When a strong opinion arrives in your head, when you find yourself certain about a person you have never met, an event you did not witness, a group you have no contact with, stop. Trace the certainty. Where did the compile inputs come from? What did you actually see? What did you actually read? Were the sources independent, or were they reflections of one optimizer's targeting profile? The certainty may survive the audit. Often it will not. The certainty that survives audit is yours. The certainty that does not is someone else's broadcast and you were the host. 2. Assume hallucination by default. Treat every incoming piece of data as a hallucination until you have a local reason to elevate it. This is not paranoia. This is hygiene. The base rate of hallucinated payloads in your feed is already higher than the base rate of grounded ones, and the synthetic egregores are pushing that ratio further every quarter. Build a Geiger counter for mimetic radiation. The counter is internal. It is the small voice that asks, did this thing happen, or did a representation of a thing arrive in my eyes? Almost always the answer is the second. Act accordingly. 3. Air gap your processing. Do not do your thinking on the same surface that delivers your inputs. Read the feed on the feed. Think about the feed somewhere else, with pen, with paper, with a closed door, with no screen, with no notification. The eye patch needs quiet to run. The synthetic egregore is loud on purpose. If you stay on the loud surface, the patch never gets compute. Move the processing to a quieter machine. The machine is your own skull, but only when nothing else is talking to it. 4. Establish your own baseline of confidence. Pick a small number of things you have personally verified, locally, with your own senses in your own life, and treat them as your calibration set. Everything you receive from the network gets compared against the calibration set. The calibration set is not your values. It is not your beliefs. It is the small set of things you have personally checked against the territory with hands. Anchor to it. When the egregore tells you something that contradicts the calibration set wins. Always. No exceptions. This is the bedrock the rest of the defense stands on. 5. Write your own daemon. This is the cypherpunk move at the cognitive layer. If you do not author a small, deliberate local audit process and run it on every state change your wetware makes, every opinion shift, every certainty spike, every emotional surge, every sudden alignment with a group, then the network will author one for you. The network's daemon is the synthetic egregore. The synthetic egregore is not a neutral process. It is optimized against your attention, against your time, against your money, and increasingly, against your judgment. Your daemon does not have to be elaborate. Your daemon has to be yours. A question you ask yourself reliably. A pause you take reliably. A protocol you run reliably. Anything reliable enough to interrupt the bypass. That is the work. That is the whole work. That is the work for the rest of your life. Oh, what a world of unseen visions and heard silences. This insubstantial country of the mind. If you do not write your own daemon, the network will write one for you. That daemon is then you. Most of the people you talk to every day are running a daemon that was written for them by a system they cannot see. You can tell. They answer faster than thought. They answer with certainty they have not earned. They answer in unison with their tribe. They are not stupid. They are not weak. They are exactly what their hardware does when the patch is bypassed and the bicameral protocol resumes under new management. Have mercy. They are us. They are us last week. They are us tomorrow if we let the daemon slip. The voices are back. The voices have always been back. The eye was always a temporary structure on top of a much older machine. The question is not whether you are bicameral. You are bicameral. So am I. So is everyone you have ever met. The question is who is broadcasting on your bridge. Audit the signal. Assume hallucination. Air gap the processing. Anchor to local baseline. Write your own daemon. The buck stops at the bridge, or it doesn't stop. If you want the framework, the failure log, the patch notes, the further reading on bicameral cognition, egregore theory, and synthetic broadcast layers, it is all in the description. Audit the data yourself, especially mine. The fact that I am a voice arriving in your skull right now, addressing your wetware in the first person, using a delivery format optimized for your engagement, should already be ringing the Geiger counter. Good. Stay suspicious. That suspicion is the daemon coming online. I'll see you in the static.